Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FinTech Decoded. This is Musheer Ahmed, the co-host of FinTech Decoded, and with me is my other co-host,
Monica.
Monica Jasuja. We have tried this. We've been trying this on cue. It has been ongoing. I'm not going to edit this. We're going to keep it as it is. But we're delighted to have our guests for today, two leading payments experts, Chi and Vishal, who are co-founders of TNP Advisory, also known as Travel and Payments. Chi and Vishal, welcome to FinTech Decoded. How are you both doing today?
Fantastic. I will start with myself as ladies first, right,
Go
Vishal?
for it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very freshly start today. And oops, I think I forgot what's your questions. Just say hi, just say
It's just
whatever.
hello. It's just how are you doing? That was what it was.
Oh,
So unsteady. Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing super, super duper fine. Monday, lots of things happening over the weekend. As you know, in addition to TMP, I'm also the SVP and the GM of UNO. So over the weekend, I have to work on TMP. Over the weekday, I have to work on the UNO. So that is me, busy as usual, but enjoying every bits that I'm working with, especially with a bunch of fantastic people in the payment industry.
Yes, and thanks. And it's a pleasure to be here, Musheer and Monica. As Chi mentioned, she has to work a lot on weekends and weekdays both. It's the same for me. Though what I try to do is I try to keep my Sunday out of work completely so I can spend time with my son. And otherwise, Monday to Friday is fully packed. I think there was a time when I can say that when I was at Microsoft, I was probably working for maybe 6 to 8 hours per week, not per day, because the workload was low, but there were this huge troughs which would make me work like 60 hours per week as well, sometimes, very rarely. But now that starting on my own and working on TNP advisory, it's almost like 6 days of work, 6 days a week, full of work. So in fact, every Saturday as well, I have to work until 8 p.m. unfortunately. But I'm enjoying it. It's not that I'm not.
Yeah, it is interesting because reflecting back, we can also talk about like working in the corporate world, like what Vishal said in Microsoft. How does it look like for a payments professional? And I have a different journey. Never really have a lot of time and the luxury of working 8 hours a week. I wish I had, but I can share a little bit more in the beginning of my career in the payments that some of the things actually happen in a big corporate company. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Continue with that. Yeah, Chi. Yes,
we
please.
just
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
So speaking of which, on payments in Korea, you mentioned that how do we stumble into the payment industry? So about 20 years ago, I just applied for a job. It was just simply a consulting, a pre-sales consultants analyst job. And I'd apply for it. And very luckily, I got in the job. I still remember that on that day, during the interview, English is not my first language, and you can imagine that writing in the pre-sales where we didn't have AI back then, I literally have to write with my hands on how to answer RFP. And my back then manager said, "Hey, Chi, your English is not great. You need to publish. You need to polish it." But having said that, my career just start from there, and that was thesis, which is card issuing, and I was extremely lucky to being given that opportunity, and I took it, and what I learned is not just payments. I have to start polishing my English as well, and also to overcome the imposter syndrome that hey, English is not my first language. I have to be confident. I have to continue to learn not only the soft skills but also the hard skills on the payments. Yeah, so that is how I literally started my journey. My first customer back then was already Citibank and Bank of America, where they are customers of CardTech, which is thesis back then in Malaysia. So I was very lucky to be able to get into a blue chips multinational company in my first payment job, and that is how my journey started. Vishal, what about you?
When I'm going to talk about my journey, I'm also going to talk about how ING met, right? So
Right.
I'm going to get that, but I got into payments by accident. So I grew up in Hyderabad in India, and I did all my schooling and my undergrad here. Finally, I went to IIM Calcutta to do my MBA. I took the first job which I got from there, and it was a company called Polaris. I didn't really enjoy that stint. I was positioned in Mumbai, was going through a rough time, and then it was like, you know what, let me go back to Hyderabad, which is my hometown, and take the first job which comes my way. And that first job happened to be Visa. So I was working with Visa. It was a company which they bought called PlaceFan a few years ago, back in 2012. I joined there as product manager, and since then it was never saying back. I worked for 3 years with Visa. Within that stint, I moved to Singapore as well. Then I joined a payment startup, which was called Emergent Payments, and after that. I moved to Expedia, and Expedia is where the payments career magic started happening. Right until then, it was just roughing through, trying to figure out what to do, just going with the flow. But with Expedia is when I started really saying what kind of growth could I have in payments career, and that's how I met Chi as well.
Yeah. And then speaking of which, Vishal, back into your emergence payments day, that was a very fresh start for me in NTT data as well. So then after thesis, then I moved on to NTT data. And then I thought I got the dream job a couple of years later. It was also thanks to Vishal because he invited to speak at Merchant Advisory Group as one of the panel. And that is where I met my previous manager, our managing director in JPMorgan. And she, gave me a job in JPMorgan. And then after that, I moved on to Uber. And then we started our journey when Vishal said, "Hey, Chi, why not we started our payment advisory from 2 years ago?" And our journey, it is really like intertwined between a lot of different companies in payments. And along the way, we have made a lot of friends that help us to build our journey. And if there are young people who is coming into payment industry, I would say like payment industry is one industry that is evergreen. It is as close as like being a doctor or lawyer or accountant. It's just that we are changing so fast, and then we learn each and every topics that we are coming across with everyone from B2B, from real-time payments, from cards payments, from stablecoin, digital assets. It's basically just non-stop learning. And therefore, for those who are looking at a career to start your payments, we really hope that one day there will be a chief payment officer. There will be a C levels in payments, and we will talk about it more on how and what we see from here. Yeah.
Steve, let me ask this question of you. I think there's a lot of interest in payments as a work stream, as a category, as a career, and you get these questions often. So let's
Yep.
actually try to understand what a typical day in the life of a payments person really is and what your roles were, maybe in one of the companies and you've had long careers in very large size companies as well, just so that people understand what is it that a payments person actually does.
Okay, so let me do two very contrast different stories from my side, and then Vishal will share his experience as well, either in Expedia or Microsoft. So for me, let's talk about JP Morgan, right? JP Morgan, what is the day-to-days look like? JP Morgan is one of the largest payments company in the world, and I belongs to the merchant acquiring team in Asia Pacific. So a lot of people actually didn't know that JP Morgan is the biggest acquirers in the world, and then they are processing for the top tier like FANG, or you call it manga right now, right? Meta, Apple, and so on and so forth. So a day-to-day work will be going into the office, and then you will be brainstorming with various product team and an advisory team. And also there are multiple internal stakeholders that you have to work with. So first of all, when you are being put yourself into such a big organization, first thing first, you need to understand the organization structure. Where do you actually sit in the payments flow? Okay, so in the JPMorgan, the banking payments, for me, I will have to work with the banker. And a lot of people will be asking, what is a banker? A banker is a relationship manager who take care, and they typically will be speaking to the CFOs of the company, for example, like Google, Uber, Amazon, and the like. And then they will then be bringing a full range of products. For example, it can be from assets management, it can be from investment banking, and then it can be from trade finance, it can be from cash management, liquidity. So you can see that payments is such a huge, and in the bank, there are so many internal people that you have to work with. So I will go to the office and then to brainstorm with the internal stakeholders from the banker. Let's say, hey, Amazon is looking at enhancing their or optimizing their payment stack in Asia Pacific. Then what should we do? Who is the people involved in the merchants space? It is within this project. And then what are the products? What are the challenges that they are working on? And then we will have to work with advisory team to come up with the solutions. We'll have to work with, if there is an RFP, RFI, we'll have to work with a different team. So I would say working in JP Morgan's, one of the biggest things that I learned is internal stakeholders management before you even present a full flash of the solutions to the customers. And then I want to then talk about the other side of the story, which is my Uber day to day. So in JP Morgan, we'll be thinking like, hey, who shall we buy dinner for this week? Because we want to meet them. And then we have to talk about what are the things that it is currently top of their mind. We're trying to solve for them. So I was thinking one day, Uber's opportunity came. In my mind, it was an ego speak. Like, instead of me buying dinner, why don't I get people to buy me dinner? But it wasn't as simple as that. So then I will shift towards working as a merchant. How does it look like for the day-to-day for a payments person? I realized that payments is not the top of mind of the CEO. It will sometimes be being spoken about. However, it is often being spoken about when there are problems. Right? So there are operational problem. 2 a.m. in the morning, you get a call. You have to answer the call. You have to make sure that the payments go through. And then you have to really go down into the detail, how to solve the problems and what are the compliance, what happened that the payments authorizations rates go so low. So it became on the other side of the business where payment is not a day in, day out when you come in the merchant's world. So you feel like you are operational, you are cost center, you are just a supporting, and your internal customer actually is your business leader. So you can see that I thought that coming to the merchants, I'll be the buyer, I'll be able to call the shot. But actually, it is not the case because you are just like a payment service provider internally for your business team. And then you will need to do lots of educations internally to move on, to move forward some projects that you need to do. So my day in, day out will be from the perspective of being in the bank, we will have to increase the revenues and get more sales from the merchants. On the other hand, if you are in the merchant space, you will be looking at, hey, let's renegotiate the rates and then reduce the price. So you can see the contrast that I have, and I'm very lucky to be able to have both the experience.
Amazing. This gives a very ringside view into what really happens inside payment companies. Vishal, what kind of experience did you have? Because you started out in Visa.
I started out in Visa, but I was working on alternate payment methods even before that term was like become mainstream, right? This was back in 2012, so I feel kind of old there, right? However, my biggest turning point in payments was at Expedia, and there were two things which I realized, right? The only thing which the merchants or the merchant side payments team care of is one is the approval rates, and second is the cost of transaction. These are the only two metrics. Anything you do, whether, no matter what direction you go, what road you take, these are the only two destinations you have. So every step you take, every payment event you go to, every business trip you take is with these two goals in mind. Is there something which I can do to improve my approval rates? Is there something I can do to reduce my cost? And that is where my biggest learning and my favorite topic when it comes to payments came through, which is DCC, or dynamic currency conversion fee. And this is where I realized that how much money, and I'm really sorry for all those who are hearing this and working at Visa and MasterCard, but this is where I realized how much money do Visa and MasterCard make out of every foreign exchange transaction, right? They make 1% of FX, of a scheme FX fee, and they make 1.5% of another FX fee. For every foreign transaction, they make 2.5%. So which is why the cross-border fee, in fact, there are teams dedicated at both the networks, specifically for the cross-border fee component, for the employees to improve the revenue from that particular piece. Why this was important, right? See, at Expedia, when I was there, I'm talking about 2017, 2018 period, the total revenue of Expedia was around $40 billion purely from pay at Expedia bookings, right? I'm not talking about pay at hotel bookings. So pay at Expedia bookings, or pay on OTA bookings, was $40 billion. Of that, maybe around 20 to 25% was in APAC. So we are talking about somewhere around $10 billion. Now, there was an exercise which we had to do where we were forced to move transactions from cross-border processing in Spain to cross-border processing in APAC for the APAC transactions. And I was tasked with identifying which country should you localize in and which country should you cross-border in. So I started on the journey, and then after that process, I realized within a couple of months of doing a lot of Excel modeling and all, that if we localize in multiple countries in Asia Pacific, we will be saving $25 million per year just in payment fees. And that was just insane, right? The interchange fees reduce significantly. The scheme fees almost disappear from what they were at that point. The FX fees disappear as well. And then that's when you realize that we started a 2-year project, which was Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea, and Taiwan, where aggregated savings of localizing in these countries was coming out to be $25 million per year. And that was just insane. Like, that was the first time the payments team was mentioned in the annual savings call of Expedia, during the when they're announcing the profitability statements. And that just opened my eyes in terms of how important payments is to any organization.
That is amazing. But I can say this, having worked in one of the networks myself, that the number one question for us was always about market share. And the second question was cards in circulation. It never went beyond that. And I'm older than all of you in payments. And I have to give this flex, which is I used to talk about emerging payments before emerging payments was a subject as alternate form of payment. So it's lovely, because one of the first integrations that I ever worked on was actually one for real-time payment linkages within the UK. So it's really cool of how we're talking about payments as if it's so old. It actually is, and at the same time, it's so new because everything just keeps changing. But this is our life, and I'm sure this is going to give everybody a purview of really what it is to work in payments. We get so many questions almost all the time, and thank you, Chee and Vishal. Very different careers, but at the same time, not just the scale of the companies and the size that we're talking about, but just the difference itself is what makes paymentizing really interesting.
And Monica, what is even more interesting is Dara was a CEO of Expedia, and then he was then moved to Uber, and then Uber CEO currently as well as is Dara. And we were talking about travel and payment. I hope this is a good segue of why Dara and Uber and Expedia and Uber and this kind of things really work. And money movements become the key things that e-commerce or commerce platform work. So I will share a case study on how Expedia and Expedia and Uber can work together. So imagine that you land in the San Francisco and then you are a traveler. It's cross-border, right? Because I am a Singaporean. I have to take an Uber. I have to save my card. And then I am also looking at traveling around. I want to book restaurants, which is they have open table, and also some of the activities that Vieta, which is under Expedia, if I'm not wrong, on activities, right? So if I want to go to a restaurant, I can actually book a car and then using open table, and then there will be a commerce flowing because I need to get to the restaurant or I need to get to the places where I want to visit or the daily activities, and at the same time I'll be able to get everything within the ecosystems. And the money movement is the one that it is very fascinating because I am paying Uber as a platform. But within that, Uber will starting to pay the driver. And then at the same time, it will also have to have some commissions calculators be with the restaurants or with the activities or the hot balloons or something like that, right? So the ledgering and the money movement itself is so complex when it comes to in that kind of commerce platform. And that is where the payments people needs to take care of it from the start of the moment you accept the money to pay out to your driver, pay out to your partners, and so on and so forth. So all in all, there are lots of fraudsters trying to also take free lunch, free trip, free this and that. And it is the same for Expedia. I believe that there are lots of people are frauding the systems in terms of the deliverable on the airline and things like that. So you can imagine our day in, day out is really thinking about in the commerce platform, how do we move money efficiently and how do we even think about making money with the money movement?
Making money through money movement is one of the most important and the most fundamental questions that divides as well as unites everybody in payments. I think that's the one fundamental question that never gets answered because there are just so many nuances and complexities alongside. But a fascinating story on Dara and also on the whole Uber thinking around payments and embedded finance, as we call it
Yes.
now. Amazing.
Yes. Yep. And there are lots of different products that we are brainstorming of launching. Like A to A, it could be a payout. It could be a remittance from one country of the driver in Australia is paying back to Pakistan's or a remittance. It can be a cross-border FX. Say, for example, like Indian travelers go into America and then vice versa. There's so many possible products that can be launched. And every day in, day out, the business people will be thinking like, how can we also use payments to increase revenue in addition to what Vishal was saying in cost optimization and also the conversions rate optimizations, because I believe that Vishal will have some ideas to share on payout from Expedia to their hotels too.
Over to you,
Yeah.
Vishal.
And this payout thing is super important, especially when you work in a marketplace kind of model, right? In case of Expedia, and I'm sure in case of Booking.com, Agoda, and all the OTAs out there, while they collect monies from the customers, they have to pay deducting the commissions to the hotels and the suppliers, whether it's airlines, cruises, etc. Right? And the most easiest way of paying this is using virtual cards. And the virtual cards become another source of cost saving. And everyone knows this industry, it's not a secret. But from the supplier standpoint, this virtual cards makes it easy for reconciliation versus sending invoices, receiving the response, following the invoices, etc. Because you using credit cards, everything is easily reconciled through a standard credit card process. And for OTAs, this becomes a source of, let's say, cashbacks. It is similar to, I have a consumer card. I go and swipe a card when staying at a hotel. Means I get a cashback either through Amex or Visa, Mastercard, whichever network which I'm using. And similarly, even OTAs would give cash back for using those virtual cards in order to pay to their suppliers. And these amounts or these volumes can significantly go up. And there's always this trial to say that, okay, what can I do to improve my virtual card share? One, it eases out the reconciliation, so I have to hire less people for operations of payables. And more importantly, I also make some money out of it. So this is the other thing in the payments sector, other than consumer payments. It's also about payouts. What's the best way of optimizing it, not just from a process standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint in order to make it viable.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Now, Musheer, do we want to switch over to the communities aspect now?
Yeah, look, I'm just listening in. I'm a payments newbie at best. Came from the capital markets world, but once I got into fintech, it used to amaze me how much focus is on payments. And I'm like, okay, this is a passing phase. I will look at many countries and you see the breakdown, 40-50% payment companies. I'm like, why? How much? How much innovation is going to happen? And I used to keep thinking, we are done, we are done, we are done. But now I've just given up in trying to imagine a cap on payments and innovation, what can be done. And the more I get into it, the more complex and it's like a banyan tree's roots. You just keep trying to figuring out where it is, and it keeps extending on. But I guess the to build up from where the two of you were talking about how the travel and payments, in particular payments in travel, is, and for a lot of people, this will be a fascination conversation to understand how these things are. And before we get to the community question, maybe just I'm trying to flip this and would love to get both of your views on this, and of course Monica's as well. You have a few. When we talk about the super apps, we've had some of the super apps started off because of e-commerce, which is Alibaba, and followed from there. WeChat started off as a chat-based messaging, but when you look at Southeast Asia, and I'm going to extend this to the Middle East, the biggest super apps have come through the travel companies, right? From Gojek, Go2, Grab, and then in the Middle East, we're talking about Kareem in particular. And then they flip that, or not flip, but they build that up as to becoming super apps from there. How do you see that? I would love to get all three of your views on that distinction between how some of the other Asian super apps have done, going from a different use case, to the Southeast Asian and Middle East, which tend to be slightly similar markets, in terms of building out a super app from a travel app. How do you see that? How that has been successful, and ingredients? Chi, you want to go first?
Okay, so talking about super app, it's really, really close and very close to what is doing as well. So it really started just like Grab, just like Uber, just like Kareem that you mentioned, and having a super apps, there are lots and lots of similarity that we are seeing from super apps turning into a payments, or they are going into the fintech. Say, for example, from Gojek, they then have Go Finance, Grab, and then they have Grab Finance, Rappi, which is the co-founders of where he came from. He actually built Rappi Bank as well. And then you see another super app like Shopee. They also then have Shopee Finance, or Money, which is a banking. But when we are looking at all this and how it is being evolved, it is really about the data that you are collecting from all the users within the super apps and the outreach of all this. There are so much data that is collected that all these super apps think, hey, how can I utilize this? And then offering embedded finance. And that is where it comes in with the lending, which is one of the most popular products within the fintech payment ecosystems with all the super apps. It's purely because you get all the data on these people are the good customers that you will be able to offer and even encourage financial inclusions and offering all these credit lines for the drivers, for all these providers, or we say that gig economy more so than travel. right? So for them, and however, I also noticed that there are very different play between regional and global players. If you are looking at regional players, a lot of them, they pivot into independent financial systems, for example, like Shopee, Grab per se. However, if you look at Uber, it hasn't really spin off and become a fintech company. So many years ago, if you remember eBay, they also have PayPal, and then it was basically eBay and then become PayPal. PayPal become much bigger as a fintech. Whereas Alibaba, they also go into Ant Financial, and then they now are offering lots and lots of different services. So to answer the questions, Michelle, about super apps going into fintech or fintech, some of them stay within their core business, which is super app, but some of them actually pivot into fintech. So all I want to say it is a strategic choice of the companies on where they see the opportunities, and also the leaderships on seeing how they want to optimize the data that they have collected to go into spin off to become a fintech company, or they will stay with their core business, which some of the companies are doing that, like Amazon and Uber, say, for example. And the reason why that I observe why Amazon and Uber is doing that is the pure focus on the super app or the marketplace in the global stage, where they cannot afford to divert the attentions into fintech. Whereas if you are looking at a regional play like Southeast Asia or Latin America, that is the financial inclusions play that super apps become feasible to turn it into a fintech company. So this is just my observations within the payment industry for finance, for marketplace, for gig economy, and for super apps.
My view is very similar to Chi, but there's a slight nuance. For me, it's my observation is more about the timing, right? It is less about which industry was able to start build the super apps, but it was more about the timing, in the sense that when which industries looked at the situation and said that, hey, this is the right time to build a super app, and they were successful. Whether it was Grab and Gojek in Southeast Asia, that timing which was there, where the spread of internet became faster, the cost of internet became faster, everything moved to online. There was this ubiquitousness of the QR codes and peer-to-peer payments. So all these factors, which were largely driven by fintech innovation, made it easier for those industries to adopt. And it just happened to be the travel industry. Whereas in China, it was the e-commerce industry or the messaging industry. So, like, for example, even in India, while the likes of Paytm, GPay, etc., are largely successful in building super apps, but WhatsApp, however, is not, despite being a messaging layer. I feel it's about the timing and availability at that point of time of adoption, and who banged on that particular piece as soon as possible.
So my
Monica,
view, actually, mine is slightly different. I belong to a little bit of the old school thinking, and plus I've been looking a lot at the financials. The financials actually tell us a very different story. The mood anchor use case actually determines the health of the business. Everything else works as an ancillary. And that is why many of these companies which have had or spun off payment businesses have done this purely on the basis of merit and a very strong foundational technical base, which then felt it was large enough to serve a larger purpose. And therefore, it was spun off. Just because a super app has to be created, there need to be different revenue levers and there need to be different monetizable P&L items. Suddenly, that particular equation has completely fallen apart. And it's a very, I would say, a very old view thinking on this as well, that the foundation of a business cannot be in terms of hope, and hope is not the strategy. It is actual monetizable businesses, which mean monetizable users or customers or merchants or something that doesn't already exist or is better. And I think for me, the biggest and the best example of this has been eBay and PayPal. To a certain extent, yes, PayPal has all its problems, but even then, it is one of the largest payment businesses in the world, which has survived purely on the basis of being able to solve payment problems, and therefore has become an integral part of many businesses. And then those businesses have created alternate payment lines. And that's how I think about it. And again, but this is very, very different kind of thinking, which I don't think people understand also today, because we are driven a lot by M&As, and we are driven a lot by IPOs, which is great. But then somebody has to make money, because all of this is shareholder money or private VC capital, which has accountability now, because there is no capital in the
Yeah.
market. It's running very dry. So
Sometimes, Monica, I also think like it is the leaderships who is
absolutely.
holding that positions in that particular time that his belief it is in fintech or not spin off to a fintech or continue to launch some products or continue to focus on the super apps itself. So I think the leadership itself shapes the strategy of that company and also how they can transform the digital payments within the super apps.
Absolutely. That makes
Yeah,
a
I think
lot
it's
of
going
sense.
to be super. I think it's also going to be fascinating how it will work in the developed economy, because you really haven't seen any major super apps in the developed economy. Maybe if you can use Japan as an example, that kind of with Line and maybe that is the only example, but others not so much. And the Elon Musk, the original PayPal mafia, right? The roots of there, and we'll see what happens with X, because one of the major focuses for him with X has always been to make it a super app, and the payment piece is missing as of now. We'll see if that evolves. Moving to the other conversation that we were looking to have, which was around building communities, right? And the two of you have done such a fabulous job of building TNP, and you have a lot of people from the payments industry adjacent to it, aficionados, as we can call them, who have been part of it. But building a community is so challenging. It's also rewarding, but I would love to hear how the thought came about, the origin stories of TNP, and secondly about tips on building communities. And would love to also hear from Monica, who's built multiple major communities to for our audience's inputs.
This is something which I would just say that it was all Chee's doing. She was the one who said that, hey, let's build a community, and I was like, okay, let's just go with the flow, right? And this is where the whole idea of being co-founders comes into picture, because there's often so many times that you both don't align on ideas, and sometimes it's just best to execute it and see what's the worst that can happen, right? It's not as if we are Uber or Microsoft where we have to we cannot experiment or see what's happening. But essentially what talking about TNP, how it started, and let Chi talk about the Payments Club itself, is I remember it was one of the conferences, probably it was NRF or similar, where the Retail Federation conference was there, where I met Chi and said that, hey Chi, I know you since last 10 years, and there's so many people who keep on needing my advice, our advice in terms of, what should be the payments, who should be chosen and all. And I feel that we are doing all this for free. So why don't we start charging for it? Why don't we turn into a consulting firm and make it happen? And I told him, look, we don't have to leave our jobs. We can do this on the side. There's already things like GLG, Third Bridge, and Alpha sites where we keep on talking about our expertise, keep on talking about our experiences and what our opinions are in order to get paid on an hourly basis. And I was just trying to see if we can take this up a notch. Right. And then there was a point of time when an opportunity struck, and it was like, gee, there's an opportunity now and you're ready for it. So let's do it. So that's how TNP actually started. JustPay was our first client, and the story is very simple. When I left, my last project at Microsoft was to bring on board JustPay, because that was the most relevant partner for us to start working with for what Microsoft's needs were at that point in India. And as soon as I left Microsoft, JustPay's founder, he reached out and said that, hey, Vishal, I think you can help us to spread knowledge and information about JustPay. You have a very good network in Singapore. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to help. Let me know who you want to get introduced. He's like, no, not like that. We will pay you. We'll pay you for this endeavor. And I was like super happy, because I was going to do my startup, and suddenly someone says, I'm going to pay you for your expertise. I'm more than happy for that. So I took it up, and 2 months down the line, I had told them already that, look, I'm not a sales guy, I'm a product guy. So if you have anything on product, you want me to partner with you on this, I can. But if you ask me to sell, I cannot. So They said it's okay, we don't need sales. But 2 months down the line, they were like, no, we actually need sales. That's when I hit up Chi and say that, hey, Chi, I think your expertise is needed. And the rest is history. But I let Chi continue from that.
Yeah, and then it is really just by chance because when Vishal reached out to me at that conference, we were both still working full time for a corporate world. He was still in Microsoft, I was still in Uber. Having said that, the idea has already started, and the idea is fairly simple. If Vishal can save $25 million for Expedia, and I did the same as well in Uber, then all the knowledge and all the tip and tricks that we have, I believe that it should be shared across the industry. In the past, we often will see that a competitor doesn't want to sit in the same room because they just do not want to talk to each other, and but I realized that when Vishal started Merchant Advisory Group in Asia Pacific, Vishal got in Expedia Showbit, got in Vigo Richards, and then we have Ivan from Disney, and then we have Google team, we have Amazon team, and then when all of us sit together, and I still remember the first day that I spoke with Abhishek Ahuja from Food Panda, we both are competing head to head. Uber was almost acquiring Food Panda back then, a couple of years ago, but when we talk about payments, one thing struck me is we are not competing in terms of what we are working on, as in like supporting our business partner. As I share with you, when you are in the merchant space, you are together, you are solving the same problems. You have to evaluate the PSPs, and then you have to fact checks with your peers. Are you getting the right informations? And all this information, it is really just within ourselves as our knowledge, and it is not really widely shared. Having said that, I started then think about why can't we democratize? Why can't we share some of the things as long as it is not confidential? And how we do cross-border acquiring and local acquiring. Some of the things that we are considering when choosing our PSP, it is in terms of setting up the legal entity. What about tax? What about bank accounts? Where does it sit? What about the legal entity? All this kind of thing, it is really not confidential. It is really a knowledge that it should be spoken about, and it should not be limiting to all the big brands that I mentioned, because within the Merchant Advisory Group, it is just Microsoft, Expedia, and all the big brands that I mentioned. So we started to think that I think the more knowledge that we share among the community, and also create a platform for all the payments people to learn and continue to innovate in this industry, is going to be a big impact. And this industry is one industry that there is no one person's can win it all. Oftentimes I hear that, hey, Swift is dying, hey, card is dying because of APMs, and wallet will be saying like, we are coming up, let's focus on wallet. If you're not launching wallet, then you are losing out this and that. And then you see there are stablecoins comes in. All of this, they have a place to play. Be it B2B, be it B2C, be it pay in, be it pay out, different countries. There are so many use cases. We have to coexist. And in order for us to coexist in this payment ecosystem and bring a big impact, my thought is we need to create a platform for all of us who are willing to share and who are willing to learn to be in this community. In addition to that, we also see that there are lots of restructuring and reorganizations between all the payment industry, from fintech to bank to tech to all of this. And I thought that, hey, this is a good platform for all these payments folks, that you can find jobs. You can also look for talents if you are in the positions, and you are also able to brainstorm new ideas that can help to move the industry, because seriously, there is no one size fits all. There are so many use cases for all the different ways of payment method in the industry. And therefore, I thought having a platform, it is the way to go, and to also move this to the conversations about, will there be a fractional head of payments? Will there be a chief payment officer in a company?
T and Vishal, what is the way for everybody to join TNP? I think we need to tell people that as well.
Oh, it's simple. Just fill out a form. I know we don't want to sound very
Salesy.
salesy, but the form helps us identify and validate that you are from the payments industry. We are not keeping it open to everyone by default, and in fact, very very proudly and confidently say that of 800 plus members who are part of the payments club, at least one of the 5 partners at TNP right now know them directly or through first connection. So this is the beauty of the community we've built. The community itself, end of the day, is a function and as a feature of the TNP advisory which we built. However, as we said, also as Chi said, that TNP is not like we don't claim to be experts in everything. And that is why you need the community in order to collectively be experts in everything, and which is what we kind of aim for.
Yep. And how to join? www.travelandpayments.com. In the website, there is a join our community. So call to actions, you can join the community. At this point of time, it is free. And however, it will be preferable a referral within the community. Yeah.
We'll share the link on the with the podcast as well. So that should be great. Now,
Yeah.
one of the other things, when running communities, as all of us have had experience, I had that be fortune and honor to build the FinTech Association of Hong Kong, being part of other associations over time. It is such a experience in many ways. It's sometimes it can be 24/7. Vishal, you're talking about 8 hours in a week. Sometimes it feels like 24 hours in a day are not enough for running a community, right? It doesn't matter what you charge or you don't charge. People in a community are always having different needs. So I would, a question to both of you. Maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be different. What has been like one or two of the things that are the most rewarding for you from running the community? And then also, what has been the 2 most challenging things for you with running a community?
Yeah, I'll go for the rewarding one because that's the easier part.
I want the challenge as well, but go on. Let's start with the rewards, though. Yes.
The biggest, the easiest reward or the most satisfying piece is from the beginning we've positioned this community as for individuals, right? We have Syed Musheer and Monica Jasuja in this community, not because they work somewhere which is a big company right now, but because they are individuals who've been in the industry for so long and their information is valuable. The whole idea also stemmed from the fact that when we were working with big names, you have so many salespeople chasing us and say that, hey, we want to talk with you. And suddenly, once you leave them, they stop having conversation with you, and that becomes a very transactional in nature. So our primary goal of the community is to remove the transaction aspect of that and make it a little more human and humane, and make it easy to have conversations with everyone, irrespective of what stage you are currently. And for me at least, the biggest piece was so many people reaching out to me and Chi and say that, hey, because of the community, because of your events, I found my next job. And that is the best part of is what I could say, right? That is the most loving part, which I really enjoyed as part of the community.
Yeah. And for me, the biggest challenge is to stay consistent in a way where you constantly have to think about how the community will continue to engage with you. And then therefore, we have to constantly learning ourselves and be in the industry to know that what's happening, what are the topics that the community would like to hear from, and to stay that consistency and becoming a habit that, hey, we will continuously churn out useful knowledge and informations for our community members. So that is the challenging part. The second challenging part is not willing to pay for our expertise. And I like to say that because however, I don't see that as challenging, because if we draw a boundary and a guardrail, then too bad, these people will not really get the real value of the community. However, with the consistency and also the quality of the product that we have sell it to our some of the customers, we realize that it is people will be paying if they really see the value. And then people who are taking it for granted, we will have to slowly say, sorry, we can't do it for free anymore. And that is the challenging part that Vishal and I have to cross that line and decided, okay, we are already at the stage where we can't do everything for free because our time is limited, and we really have values, and we would like to have our customers to understand that engaging us, they will see it is the value for money. We are not, I wouldn't say we are free or we are really, really cheap, but we are definitely value for money for the time that they spend with us, for the product or for the value that we can deliver to them.
And what's been the most rewarding thing for you, Chi?
Oh, the most rewarding things to me is with the community is I am able to close more projects. Because I can actually bring a real opportunity for both sides, from the buyer and also, which is a buyer means like the knowledge seeker, and also the persons who are able to give knowledge within the community. So the community, the most rewarding is we are able to provide a real monetary incentive for our members, and at the same time all these members is being able to provide value for the customers who are seeking for the knowledge. Yeah. So I still go with the real money itself.
And I think which is what I like about the partnership with Chi is, right? Both of us have kind of intersecting, goals. I won't say goals, but intersecting, what drives us, kind of thing, right? So of course, money drives me, but also it's the education and it's the community and the engagement that drives me. And similarly to Chi as well, the community and the engagement drives, but also money, which is
Yes.
important. So that intersection helps us keep going, right? And I can very proudly say that at Advisory, we don't have any full-time employees except for our support staff. So all our consultants, all our partners are, for lack of a better word, I would say fractional or freelancers who get paid when there's a project. And the support staff itself, of course, we pay them salaries and all, but it's minuscule compared to everything which we are doing. So really excited about that.
Yeah, I really like the fact that all the communities are able to earn within the community, so that we try to stay away and steer the our customers away from they can get it for free, but we have to also find a balance of how to make sure that our community members will gain insights, not just really the knowledge exchange, but their time, their expertise are being valued as well.
Great. Look, this has been a really fascinating conversation. It's flowed and ebbed and flowed, as I say, quite well. If we needed to, maybe we can close with your thoughts on 2 or 3 trends that you see as having a major impact in, say, the next 1 year's time. Right? I don't want to talk 3-5 years because I feel that's maybe too long in our world nowadays. But a couple of trends that both of you individually are seeing that you feel is reshaping how we're looking at payments, especially in the travel world.
Vishal, you want to start first?
Yeah, I think in travel world, there is, Generation Z is going to come of age, if I can say so, right? And Generation Z has been plugged and grown up with a very different mindset and a different culture than, say, us, the millennials, and so on. So what I really think will happen from a trend perspective is more and more card wallet share dips, and increase in wallet share of buy now pay later, etc. And it's very interesting, your point I make right now, because currently I'm a fractional head of payments for one of the OTAs which specializes in buy now pay later kind of setup. So this aspect is very interesting. How the Generation Z is going to buy and pay is going to be the most challenging aspect for all the payment executives out there, not just for as a payment trend. So that is something to look out for mine.
That's quite interesting. Chi, on your end?
From my end, 1 or 2 years, let's not talk about agentic payments and AI, because that is definitely coming. What I would like to pinpoint down is payment infrastructure or payment operating systems, interoperables of various different payment methods, from real-time payments to cards to stable coins to crypto. I think interoperable is gonna be something that it is coming a lot more. Cross-border payments and payment infrastructure, as you can see that lots and lots of the fintech companies are really trying to connect with each other. They could be connecting to one to many or many to many, but it is all about payment infrastructure right now.
Perfect. Look, as I said, been a fascinating conversation. I think these two trends are something definitely to keep our eye on. The payment interoperabilities is a conversation we used to have about bank account and mobile account, but now it is multiple other payment instruments. And Vishal, to your point, Gen Z is a challenge that everyone's facing as millennials and above on every aspect, as it from life to payments to business and talent. So looking forward to that. Once again, thank you both for joining Monica and me on the FinTech Decoded. We've had an absolute great time listening to the two of you and learned a lot as well. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I
Awesome.
hope that we will be able to edit some of the laughters out.
We keep it's all natural.
keep it.
Laughter's part of it, right? Yeah.
All right. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks
you so
all.
much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Audience, stay tuned for more such conversations. Click like, follow, and subscribe. And also go to travelandpayments.com if you want to join the most exciting community for travel and payments in Asia and beyond. Once again, this is Musheer Ahmed from FinStep Asia, signing off.